How do you feel now about Sleeper in relation to your other films? This is a film that I think technically shows you at your best. It shows that you've really learned a tremendous amount.
Well, it's an interesting thing. It's certainly been the most successful film that I've done, and the most broadly appreciated. That, and oddly enough, Play It Again, Sam, which I didn't direct, those two films for some reason have been the most commercially acceptable. I feel that's probably because they're the most structured films, the most story films that I've ever done. The problem in learning anything in filmmaking, I think, for someone like myself, is that I get a chance to occasionally get out around the country from either playing places or talking at a college or something like that, and I get an enormous diversity of opinion on my film, and it's very tough to put together all the opinions and all the speculations I hear about it and come up with something that's helpful. It's really difficult for me. I've read a certain amount of reviews of Sleeper. I've spoken to people about it. I've also done the same thing with Everything You Always Want to Know About Sex and Bananas, and it's very, very difficult. There's such a diversity of opinion that it's really hard to be able to assess facts and say, well, it's obvious that these conclusions can be drawn from this information. So it is difficult. I mean, I've run into people that just didn't like Sleeper and preferred earlier films of mine. I've run into other people who have never liked a film of mine until Sleeper, and I could say the same thing about the other films that I've done. This
is the first one of yours that I know of that has captured children.
It's because it's a physical picture. I mean, it's tons of slapstick and costumes and flying wires, and it's a really a knockabout picture.
But at the same time, it's less chaotic. Now, I think maybe I like the more chaotic pictures.
I got that impression from your review of the film.
Right.
And I've spoken to other people who felt the same way. I don't think you're alone in that. There are certain people that prefer a more chaotic approach. And there's not much one can do about that. The idea generally dictates the approach that you take with it. A picture like Sleeper, just would never be chaotic. I mean, it depends. When I was conceiving it, it depends on clean visuals and white spaces and, to give a certain kind of impression. I also thought that there were some wild moments in it, but I don't know. I mean, there are people that wrote reviews of Sleeper that said they felt for the first time I was controlling the comedy, letting the humor come out of the story rather than forcing things. You get an enormous diversity of opinion, and not from irresponsible people. I mean, from people that are trying to assess the film. So it is difficult to really come to conclusions about it, I mean, for me, to be able to say, well, I think this is absolutely right, and I've got to keep that in mind. It's a very tough thing to do.
I think that adds to the way comedy plays, when the image itself is very simple.
Well, it's interesting. I remember once you wrote a review of a picture that Renee Taylor and Joe Bologna were in.
Oh, yeah, Made for Each Other.
Made for Each Other. And you got into, just peripherally, a discussion of color in comedy, which I thought was very interesting at that time, because you were aware of the fact that it was a problem to comedy filmmakers. I don't know if people have any idea that color is a very tough thing. It's another problem. Sound is one big problem, and color is another problem, and it's very, very difficult to. Now, fortunately, Sleeper, I think, is good luck because the area that the film takes place, that the drama takes place in, lends itself immediately. I mean, it's a very theatrical choice in a certain sense, because you're in the future and you can do things without forcing them. But normally with comedies, I think that only Buster Keaton made comedies that really look good. I don't think the Chaplin films look good.
No, I agree with you.
The Marx Brothers films look good.
No, that's true. One of the reasons that people begin to compare your films to early silent comedies, it's because this picture looks so good, whereas your earlier work was less likely to be compared to silent comedy.
I think that's true. I think that, when I first was in film at all, when I had written the script for What's New Pussycat years ago, I wanted very much for the director to shoot that picture in black and white. And they wouldn't think of it, of course, at that time. And I couldn't give good reasons for it. I just knew that for some reason, color was not good for comedy. And at that, in the year that was made, up until that time, color had never been used for comedy well. And it's a very, very tough thing. I understood it emotionally without being able to articulate it or analyze it, but I knew something was wrong with color and comedy. And when one sees some of the Jerry Lewis pictures, you see
it's a serious problem.
the color is not helping him. It's hurting, but the audience goes in and they don't know why they're not being affected by something, or they don't know why a joke is ruined. But a joke is a very kind of tenuous little thing.
Mel Brooks, the producers, which was so ugly on a big screen that I could hardly look at it. The comedy really emerges on television, partly because Mel Brooks's medium has always been television. You're a crazily disciplined man, and that's how you've solved it. I think most people, if they get jokes, don't think about the aesthetic problems. How is it that you do so much?
Well, you see, I enjoy working, and I have a massive guilt over not working. That's one thing.
Does that mean that you get depressed if you don't work?
I get nervous, and I'm not one of life's great enjoyers. I can't go away for the weekend and enjoy myself, or travel and enjoy myself, or go to the beach, or that kind of thing. What's fun for me is to sit down and try and write something for the New Yorker, or work on a film script. If I'm not working for a day and a half, it makes me nervous. I just, I don't like it, and you'd be amazed how much you can get done just by consistency. Just by constantly working. I was reading the review of the new book on Faulkner. He really was able to bring it off. I mean, he was a man of extraordinary genius, and it was just wonderful. But I like that idea. I mean, I think you can get a lot of stuff done that way, and that's what really counts. I've always felt that Mailer did too many things, that he was this massively
he goes
gifted
to the opposite
writer.
Extreme, of course, sure.
And shouldn't do it. I mean, the important thing is turning out the work. I think only the work is important. When I conceive of a film, I never think in those terms. I think that it really is a psychological thing, that what happens is I think of an idea and work on the script of it, and what seems to emerge for whatever subconscious reason is a tendency to be out there alone, relying enormously on myself, in this picture on Diane Keaton to a degree, but basically myself and maybe one other female. Now, I think part of this probably comes from the fact that I began as a stand-up comedian by myself out in front of an audience. And if you look at a picture like Take the Money and Run, my first picture, it's very close to a monologue in certain ways. It's joke, 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 except instead of standing up and telling them, they're kind of played out, but they're many unrelated jokes, and it moves along with no sense of real story, just joke by joke. And I find that because I was a comedian, a cabaret comedian, there's a tendency to be out there alone and rely on myself to a large degree. What I would like to do in the future, if I can, I'd like to develop the substance of the movies. I'd like to see if I can make the movies more substantial, if I could use the comedy to make a point now and then, or get into something that isn't, I've always just tried to be amusing as I could, with very little interest in, is it satirical, is it saying anything? And I would like to see if I could use the comedy to make some kind of substantial point. I think possibly in the course of doing that, automatically other figures of importance would arise. I agree with you that in the earlier films that I did, they were one-shot things, because when you're doing a surrealistic film, there is a tendency, at least for me, to want to hit and run quickly. In Sleeper, I made a concerted effort to try and draw out the gags more, try and build them more. But I'm not sure where specifically you're thinking of that you felt I could have had more fun. I'm sure there are. What I'm doing, or what I have done, is almost like a painter who's painting primitives.
No, it's no longer so primitive.
But
Yeah.
What I'm getting at is the early comedians film was comparatively new at the time, and it's very tough to work in the mode of a classic kind of comedian today. It's not so easy for me because, first of all, I talk, and Keaton and Chaplin didn't, and when they had to, they fell apart. I thought that Keaton talking and Chaplin talking were awful, in my opinion. You know, it's such a strange thing that if Chaplin or Keaton spoke in the great films that they did, you would not have expected them to speak funny. They would have spoken like real human beings. You know, I'm expected to speak amusingly. On the one hand, you do physical comedy because that's one of the great staples of the screen, and it's very hard to reconcile the two. The person who does physical comedy and can also talk like a human being, because when I'm sitting here talking to you like this, or as I would talk on the screen and say hopefully amusingly, then to get up and drop into a sewer or to teeter on the edge of a building, there's an inconsistency between the broadness of really broad physical clown-like comedy and the fact that in real life when I'm talking, you know, I'm not talking commensurately broad with that. So there's a lot of problems to work as a comedian now, and a comedian in the sense of Chaplin or Keaton. So occasionally I might have a tendency to do more of a story kind of picture than they would do, and less of that odd kind of art form that they developed. You know, their films, a comedian's film is unlike anything else. I mean, the star of the film is not the director or the script. It's almost like put the camera on Chaplin and let him go, and it's conceivable that he will sustain the hour and a half for you and be hilariously funny. Now, you know, films have come a long way and stories are more complex.
There is something very relaxing about jokes just thrown off. A little sloppiness works. But if you're using a story structure, as in Sleeper, then you're aware that the sloppiness is killing the joke, too.
You need the exact right mixture. It's tough to do comedy in the sense that when I see an old Buster Keaton film, sometimes I'm dazzled by the technical virtuosity. I mean, it's just incredible. And I might not even think it's that funny. You know, I mean, he personally doesn't kill me. I don't find him a very funny man, but a brilliant executor. The conception and execution of the gags is really poetic. Chaplin makes me laugh more frequently, even though you know, I get chills from him sometimes when he's wrong. See, City Lights to me is a film that works, and I loathe sentimentality as much as anyone, and yet for some reason, to me, I thought he hit it right on the head in there. I thought he had just enough sentimentality and didn't go over the edge.
Mean Streets, which I think was probably the best American film of the last year.
I agree wholeheartedly. I thought it was the most fascinating and the best film that I've seen in probably a few years. I mean, it really was remarkable to me. First of all, I thought it was incredibly modern. You know, it made everything else seem creaky. Even terrific pictures like On the Waterfront or Bonnie and Clyde, it made them seem creaky with it had a modernity to it because it has, first of all, I respond very well to improvisation. I like that a lot. And it had a random quality to it, a kind of ambling quality where I thought scenes were picked up for a moment, little scene, and then kind of dropped and thrown away in the best sense. I thought that it was truly like a new piece of music or something where, a breakthrough in structure, because for some reason there was, your attention was held throughout the whole thing, and yet, if you look at it, it was incredibly rambling and indulgent in spots, and yet I could see, when I saw that picture, I could stay in the theater and sit through it again immediately because it was so incredibly fresh because of the way that it was done, between the improv. I thought all the performances in it were good, I mean, really good. I thought De Niro was remarkable, truly remarkable. I mean, I thought that was the most exciting for me, the most exciting performance I had seen since Marlon Brando years ago. I thought the performances were wonderful, and the style of the film was wonderful, and there was no, there was a true vision in that film. The director truly had a vision, I thought, he had something to say, and it was though he could only make that statement in the form that he made it, and I thought it was really a remarkable film. And the proof of it to me is that films that I've loved, like Bonnie and Clyde, which I thought was a great film, seem creaky next to it. You know, in some way he managed to make his own personal, specific, highly special experience totally universal. Now, you know, I don't think the picture has done well commercially, but I'll tell you something interesting, and I guess sad in a certain way. I saw Mean Streets a few times in East Side Cinema, where it was playing, I think, Cinema 2 or something like that. There were some people in the audiences that were just crazy for that film. They had seen it before. They were yelling things. I mean, they were just in love with it, as I was. There were a good number of people in the audience that left after both times I saw that, that couldn't get with it, that found it
But this is true for every breakthrough movie.
Sure, I
really
understand
is.
that. But when I saw The Exorcist, which I saw coincidentally on 2 consecutive nights, two groups of people that I was with socially, I had the same feeling both times about it. I mean, but the audience feeling was very interesting because the audience was led to believe, and this is really a positive response, the audience was led to believe that they were going to see something truly special on that screen. And when they came out of the theater, most of them felt that they had seen it. Most of them felt,
Right.
I didn't find it a scary picture, but the scenes in the bedroom with the little girl, several of them, were so shocking to that audience, not frightening, but shocking, that when they opened the door and the girl was on the bed and they'd play out 2 minutes of her screaming and smashing her mother and then slam the door on the girl, the audience would burst into spontaneous applause both times, as kind of a tour de force. You know, what you would think on stage would be Willy Loman or something. I mean,
Sure.
and when they left that theater, well, of course, they were all disappointed for the first hour. It was an interesting thing to me because the audience was leaving and they were telling their friends, you've got to see this if you don't see it, because there was a special quality to it. You know, I don't know in the end, over the broad mass of the country, living in Little Italy for 2 hours, as you actually did, he just thrust you down there, and would mean anything. I don't know. I saw Thieves Like Us about 2 weeks ago. I thought the audience was let down when I saw it. There was a small audience there that night. I think there's some problems with Thieves Like Us for me. One is that, first of all, you are immediately aware when you make this kind of film, even though it's a different film totally, you're immediately aware that Bonnie and Clyde was made. So right away, the joy of recreating the 30s, the gratuitous violence, the slow motion death at the end, all those things you've seen directly in Bonnie and Clyde. So there's an inevitable comparison to it. The next thing is that there was a sense in the audience of, I thought, that it was remarkably tasteful and low-key and beautifully done, and when it was over, it lacked, for the audience and also for myself, moments of great emotional excitement, laughter, sadness. It didn't have it. You walked out without the kick. It was like a great filmmaker had told this story with superb taste and great artistry, and you didn't feel enough. You were not involved in the story too much. There was something lacking. When that audience filed up the aisle, they all said, yeah, it was great looking, and the creation of the period was lovely, and the little girl was dynamite. But for some reason, we're not too thrilled by it. I wanted to leave that theater with an emotional kick commensurate with the amount of artistry that was up on that screen. That obviously, Altman knows exactly what he's doing. He's got a tremendous command of the medium. He's innovative. He's wonderful. And yet, when I left the theater, something was lacking. I didn't have the impulse to say to people that I was with, you know, God, I was moved, or wasn't that fascinating? I thought that The Long Goodbye was all right.
Oh, God. Well, see, that's where he really does. I thought The Long Goodbye was the funniest,
I know
wildly
you
funny
did.
movie.
You see, and I can't
last
imagine
year.
that it was wildly funny, nor do I think that almost any audience would ever consider The Long Goodbye wildly funny.
People are laughing. Oh, no.
I mean, I saw
Oh,
it
but
with
they
an
do.
audience.
I mean, loads of people.
It would surprise me. I mean, I can't, you know, because I'm sensitive to things that are funny. I didn't find it funny. I mean, I found, again, there's an unpredictable quality about Altman that I do appreciate enormously. I mean, you know, you're not going to get a factory-made film that he's always ahead of you,
Yeah,
that
yeah.
you're not ahead of him. And I thought some of the scenes with Mark Rydell was superb.
But-
Thieves Like Us and The Long Goodbye, I think both got a very good press in New York, and I think they deserve a good press. I'm just saying that I think that when audiences went in to see The Long Goodbye and Thieves Like Us, that what happens is there is something that they're not attuned to, or that Altman is not giving them, or there's something not connecting there. I mean, I would never think of that picture as funny in a million years. And, you know, listen, there are people that think Beat the Devil is funny. To me, it looked like a giant mistake that guys got hung up on a film and realized that that it was too awful to be serious.
Well,
I recall seeing it a few times and thinking, I guess some people will find this funny. I'm not one of them. The Long Goodbye, I didn't even think The Long Goodbye, I thought what was good about it was not the comic aspects of it. I mean, I didn't think, I would never regard that picture as a funny picture. I regard that picture as a certain kind of unique type of picture.
Visually, it's simply extraordinary. I mean, Altman has an eye.
Yeah, although if you
just-
look at some of the exteriors, don't kill me, and I'll tell you why. When he's shooting in an area like in McCabe, or when Altman's working in, say, Thieves Like Us, with a different cameraman, but when you're shooting in an area that's kind of gray and misty, you get that beautiful look. But I found the exteriors in The Long Goodbye were frequently those typical kind of sunny exteriors that just didn't look great to me. Now, I'm not talking about the structure of the shots or the movement. I'm talking about the lighting. I thought some of the things in Thieves Like Us, from a technical point of view, were dazzling. I mean, or in The Long Goodbye, just right at the beginning in the supermarket, some of that stuff just killed me. I thought it was wonderful technically. I just thought that in the end, when I left the movie theater, I need more. I think MASH or McCabe was a greater bow to theatricality. And consequently, McCabe was a much more conventional picture. The only thing is there has got to be ultimately, I think, something that the audience, some kind of satisfaction that they leave with. It needn't be a large climaxes.
See, I don't really think so. Bananas, for example, the last half hour or so of Bananas really fell apart. And yet
there are people that find that the funny half hour.
I think Bananas people love despite the fact that it fell apart. I mean, maybe some of them liked the last part better than I do. I think some of the work in Bananas is your best work. I mean, I really like a lot of it.
But of course, it's easier with the picture of individual jokes, too,
Yeah,
to say, well, I like jokes 8,
Yeah,
9,
but
10. And
people-
they've got to get some kind of fulfilled feeling from it. And I think what happened in Thieves Like Us, the night that I saw it, that the audience left that movie theater, and this was an East Side audience who had deliberately chosen to see that film, left it with a feeling of that they were not fulfilled, that they're still novel pictures. I saw Brewster McCloud, I didn't
Yeah.
like it, but I thought it was, again, not the work of a hack.